Hi, this is Ian Berry, and welcome to another Spark a Nation conversation. Just a reminder that a Spark a Nation is a spark that ignites passion, that leads to action, that changes what's normal. And so it's most appropriate that my friend and colleague of 25 years, I reckon, Keith,
yeah,
is my special guest today, because if there's a guy that I know in the world who knows more about passion than most people, it would be Keith. I said in the introduction online to this workshop that the very first time I met Keith, I made a mental note: affable and valuable. And I have to tell you that in the quarter of a century that we've known each other since, nothing has changed. In fact, it's probably got better. I would regard Keith as, if not the most valuable professional speaker on the planet today, then if he's not the most valuable, then he'd be in the top 5. And so you're in for a treat today, folks. Keith, you got to invest a lot of money to get Keith to come to your place, and so I'm very grateful that he's agreed to give of his time today and share with us what really has been an interesting year for you, Keith. Keith's been doing 100 presentations in person per year for a very long time, and he had that many booked in advance when COVID hit. And I think, Keith, you had 70 of those presentations cancel in about 10 days.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I went from sometimes you go from zero to hero. I went from hero to zero in about 7 days. So, 10 days at the most. So it was. Thank you, Ian, for that beautiful introduction as well. I appreciate your kind words, mate. You're right. We have known each other for 25 years, because I've been doing this for 25 years. When I first started, I met you at the Adelaide conference, which was the first conference I went to, and thought, geez, this is great. Back in those days, the National Speakers Association, now Professional Speakers Association. So, it's been a phenomenal journey over 25 years. So it's been, from a very, very humble beginnings to the business that I have today and the opportunities that I have today. So appreciate hanging out with everybody today and having a conversation, Ian, that you would say.
Yeah, indeed. And I've asked you all to think about, what have been your lessons from COVID. Keith's going to talk a bit later on about what he sees that might be the future in 2022. I know myself, I'm actually more excited about the future than I think I've ever been, because personally, I think this is a great opportunity. I'm seeing political folk waste the opportunity, in my view, but I think there are many people out there who are seeing this as an opportunity and are making the most of it. And Keith would be one of those folks. So we might kick off, Keith, with that sort of hero to zero sort of leap, and then what you did to actually pick yourself up and go into a different world.
Yeah, look, thanks, Ian. So a little bit of background. So for 25 years, I've been a professional speaker and run big leadership programs with organisations. So I would be on a plane sort of every other day to almost, speak at 100 events a year. Didn't do that in my first year, but I did that in my second year, and I've done that pretty much every year ever since. Spoken to about 1.6 million people, 33 different countries, written 5 best-selling books, published in 12 different languages. I'm big in Russia. Sold 25,000 books in a morning in Russia. I think they're using it for firewood, but that's, however it gets done, really. Was fortunate enough that I've really pursued my passion, and I profited from my passion. So Ian's right. I'm normally booked 12 months in advance. I was in London just starting a year-long leadership program with Mercer, so 15,000 people. They gave me their top 60 people to work with for the whole year. And there was this thing called coronavirus. And I'm sort of going, coronavirus, geez, and came back on a plane with a guy who was coughing and spluttering all the way on the coming home, and I didn't get COVID. He didn't have COVID. Well, if he had COVID, I didn't catch it, and then everything just went pear-shaped. And as Ian said before, 70 conferences cancelled in 10 days. I got to tell you, I rocked backwards and forwards in the corner for a little bit. I had a big long drink for a couple of days, and then I said I better learn this thing called virtual, which I'd never done before. I've done a couple of Zoom briefing meetings with clients, but never presented virtually. Why would you want me to present virtually? I'll just get on a plane and I'll be there. So in the following, so my mantra when COVID hit was, this is not a time to go through COVID, this is a time to grow through COVID. And where there is chaos and confusion, there is opportunities. And I'm not being a mercenary now, but where there is chaos and confusion in any market. My business grew in the GFC. Most speakers' businesses didn't. My business has grown, I was just saying to Ian before, this year I clock up about 135 presentations, haven't left home. I have a phenomenal life. You know, like I don't have to get on a plane. The hardest thing I've had to do is get in my car and drive into town or drive to the Sunshine Coast or drive to the Gold Coast. I've not travelled anywhere for a presentation. But my mantra for those couple of, you know, when COVID first hit, that was firstly, I built a studio. So my studio has 3 cameras. So can I give everybody a guided tour in? Is that okay to do that?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I present with slides here. So I sort of talk to people and share with them what we're going to do and how we're going to do it and what's going to happen. I get into people's faces sometimes. And then, you know, the other thing that we do is we often, so, you know, I'll do some overhead work a little bit and we'll talk and we might even answer some questions this way. And then if I have to put things on the full screen, I can do that and we can go through that whole process. And I run it all myself, all in this room, which is about 4 metres by 3 metres big. And that was, and this is my, well, I was going to say this is my second version of my studio. In essence, this is probably 2.0. I had about 4 versions of this in my previous home before we just moved into a new home back in May. And so this is where I've done all my work, and everything that I thought couldn't be done virtually has turned out being, you know, being better. But to be perfectly honest, it's not that I'm talented, smart, or anything like that. I just come back to that, you know, don't go through it, grow through it. So how do I grow my business? How do I become a better presenter? How do I become more articulate? How do I become, you know, more dynamic? How do I create a better experience virtually than I did in person? They were the questions that I kept on asking myself. And the other thing I should say is the first thing I did really is once I, you know, had a long drink for a couple of days, I reached out to 200 clients in the space of 2 weeks, and just checked in with them and said, "How are you? Are you okay? You know, anything I can do for you? I'm not going to send you an invoice. You tell me what you need." And so I did a whole stack of free presentations. And if you want my alternative motive, I used that to learn this. I didn't want to charge anybody for something that was going to be shitty. And I took the time, and that gave me a chance to learn this. It gave me a chance for some of my clients and even my prospects to just see that this could be a dynamic platform to do the work that I do. And that's been a wonderful, you know, sales lead indicator for me around it. So, you know, that's what happened, you know, to get to this point now of the business that I do now. And so still run large leadership programs, still do corporate presentations, still do group mentoring. You know, there's a few things that I've been able to do. And, you know, if I can share one, and Ian gave me a rundown of people's businesses and things like that. And I know some of you have got traditional businesses and some of you have got, you know, service-based businesses, professional service-based businesses, is that the one other message that came across my head in thinking about it, I have no boundaries. You know, last year I presented so I'll share a couple of things, Ian, and then you just like, you know, give me if you want me to stop.
Yeah.
But here's something I want to share 2 stories with you. So I did something for Swiss Re. Swiss Re was a client of mine here in Australia, and the guy who I just stayed in touch with moved to London. His boss a lovely lady was based in Zurich, and they said, we'd like you to run something for our team. And I said, yeah, sure, no worries at all. Where's your team based? And they said, look, we're going to have people, now understand this, we want you to deliver a presentation to everybody. And there was people in Dallas, there was people in Rio de Janeiro, there was people in LA, there was people in Japan, there was people in Thailand, there was people in the Middle East, there was people in Zurich, there was people in London, there's people in Cape Town. And I did a presentation and so, presented to 60 odd people right across the world. It wasn't unusual last year that I did 3 presentations in a day. I did something in New Zealand, I did something in Australia, then I did something in London. And so it was like my whole thinking was there is no boundaries to what I can do or where I can go. The other thing that was really interesting is I got a contact from a network marketing group in South Africa, a guy, and it said, we'd like you to do a pre-record for our group in the US. And I said, oh, look, I can, it doesn't have to be a pre-record. I can get up early, I can stay up late. I've done that before. And they said, no, we want you to do a pre-record and we need it at least 4 months before the presentation. I go, wow, 4 months before the presentation. And I said, well, why do you need it so early in advance? Like it's a 45-minute presentation. It doesn't take that much to top and tail it and do all that sort of stuff for pre-records. And he said, we have a big Amish community that will watch this. And I'm going, well, unless Amish have changed, the thing I know about Amish is they don't like technology. They're still in horse and buggies, and they still build sort of buildings with wooden nails and all that sort of stuff. And I said, how does that work? And they said, here's what's going to happen. We're going to take your presentation, we're going to have it transcribed. The elders of that community are going to read your presentation. They're going to give it the thumbs up. They're then going to translate it into their language. And then they're going to run it as a movie. So let me tell you, I am big in the Amish community these days. I'm huge. Big following. So it's been a wild ride. It's been a wild ride. So I suppose, why do I share that all with you? For a couple of reasons. One is that there are no boundaries. Don't go through it, grow through it. At the end of the day, we're still back to the basics of staying connected to our customers, to our clients. And the thing that, Ian's phenomenally great at doing this. He is the epitome of authenticity. But the one thing I've learned through COVID is authenticity is the new currency of credibility. And the more we are authentic, because everybody now, by the way, is just, an arm's length away from us. Now that we're so close to everybody, even though we're so far away, authenticity is a phenomenal currency to have and a wonderful way to connect with people.
I'd call that a winning beginning, folks. A couple of things that I took away. Let's not go through it. Let's grow through it.
Yeah.
I agree about authenticity. I think it is the new currency. There's no new normal, folks. Anyone that goes back to normal needs to see a psychiatrist, in my view. But the currency is about authenticity. And I think also the other thing about, there are no boundaries, there are no limits. I mean, the quantum physicists have been telling us for 30 years that we live in a world of infinite possibility. Yeah. And well, welcome to that world, because anything is possible. And so I think we'll start there. I'm sure that there's, you might have a question, you might have a comment, you might like to ask Keith whatever you like. We're free and easy here. It really is a conversation. So over to whoever'd like to pop into the conversation first.
Can I?
Yeah, Jackie, go for it.
I'm no disrespect to your age, Keith, but you've been doing this for 25 years in a certain way. Was it a big transition for you to make that shift?
I've always changed, Jackie. So I turned 60 this year, and and so I've always looked to keep on changing and evolving. And I have to say, when I first started, it was, you probably got away with every 7 years. You know, if I look back on my career, I changed every 7 years, and then it became, like 5. And I reckon now, over the last couple of years, I've changed every couple of years. Over those last probably, 5 to 6 years, I've changed every couple of years. It was, for me, I just submerged myself in being back into being a student. So I'm fortunate. I can present. I've got gestures and stories, and I've spent a lot of money on learning. I've had 5 presentation skills coaches. One of the coaches you've had on here, Colin James, has been a mentor of mine. So I've had 5. So I could present. What I needed to learn is, how do I do this thing? And fortunately, when you're on a pathway, people come into your life. A lovely guy, a guy called Chris Smith, who was at the time and still is, he was the production manager for the World Surfing Tour. So his business, and so he helped another speaker friend of mine, Darren Hill, build his studio, and Darren introduced me to Chris, and Chris has helped me put all this together. Even now, down to Jackie, I can walk in here and push this one remote and it turns everything on. Before I'd go, let's turn that light on, and now I'll go and turn that on, and now it's like this. So in essence, it hasn't been. It was. I spent about 40 hours up front, because I had plenty of time on my hands, learning what the best YouTubers do, what the best virtual presenters, whoever they might have been at the time, to do. And I thought, okay, I'll mirror them, I'll model them. And so it was a little tough, but I got my head around it, because the one thing, a lot of my colleagues, and Ian will endorse this, a lot of my colleagues, I won't do virtual, or I'll just stand in front of my computer and have my young, 15-year-old kid hold the flashlight on my face, and I'll just present that way. And they wondered why nobody's interested. So, yeah. So it hasn't been. It's been a bit of a journey, but I'm pretty excited about it. I was just saying to Ian now, I said, I don't take this the right way, and this is not arrogance. I don't need an audience. I'm really happy with the less amount of travel, and I'm enjoying not that hustle and the waste of time of hurry up and getting to an airport to wait, to get on a plane to wait, to get off a plane and wait, to get to a conference and wait, and do it all over again at home, coming home.
Do you miss the physical interaction?
I've had a few, Denise, I've had a few presentations that have, in the last little while, where they've been hybrid. So I've had people in the room and people online at the same time. And I enjoyed the variety, but I don't actually, I weigh it up and I go, you know what, for me, to go to an event now, it's I won't say it's a hassle, because that's what you get paid for, but it's this a point of view where I've got to get in the car and drive somewhere, and I normally get to a venue an hour before to listen to the speaker and all that sort of stuff.
So it's probably
I tell you what I miss, Denise. I miss the instant feedback that you get from someone who's just listened to you present, and they come and say, "Oh, wow, what you said just made all the difference. I needed to hear that." Or, before, while you're getting ready to present, somebody will come up to you and said, "Oh, I heard you 3 years ago, and you said X, Y, Z, and it made a big difference to me and my family." And I went, "Wow," and so you don't get that virtually.
Yeah, and it's probably also shown you just how much we have put up with, and how much we really need to think out of the box.
Yeah, you've really got to think so differently. You think of some of the businesses that have thrived, and take away the big box businesses or the online businesses and things like that. But you just think some of the people who have just done things differently, and have just said, well, okay, so people aren't going to come into my store. What do I do differently? And or if we're in a lockdown, what do I need to do differently? And there's been some great ingenuity and innovation that people have demonstrated during this.
It's always the innovators, the ones that step ahead, are the ones
Yeah.
that are always breaking those barriers.
Yeah, exactly, Denise. But that comes back to mindset. Like there'll be somebody who will go, "There's no opportunities," and other people will turn up and go, "There's an ocean of opportunities." I just happen to fit into there's an ocean of opportunities. I just need to swim and dig and just find out where they are. But you've got to, mindset's everything. Mindset precedes success. Mindset precedes. I often say to people, you've got to go there mentally before you go there physically. And so I'm just constantly thinking about, okay, and I learned this from a guy. I was in New York doing a National Geographic photography retreat a few years ago now. I was doing a couple of conferences there, and in between I went and did this National Geographic photography, which was right in the middle of New York, and it was headed up by a guy called Bob Sarsha. And Bob Sarsha worked for National Geographic at that stage 20 years. He had 20 covers with National Geographic. Phenomenal photographer. And I said, "What's your secret around leadership?" Because he talked about leadership at New York City University, and I said, He said, "We have to be curious enough to see not just what's on top of the hill, not just what's over the hill, but also what's around the corner." And I think there's a wonderful message in that for us around COVID. Like if 2020 was unprecedented, and then 2021 has been unpredictable. And it's the ability to see not just on top of the hill or on the other side, but around the corner. That's where we have to be if we're going to be able to take advantage of the unpredictable times that we're currently in.
My thoughts about 2022 is it just to add another and that is that it's uncharted.
Yeah, nice.
And so
nice.
therefore we get an opportunity to actually rewrite how it is.
Yeah.
Because none of us really, and when you think about the future, none of us have been there before.
100%. 100%. I just think, I like that Uncharted because I've been looking for another run. I think that one of the things there is that you're right. We have to sort of go, okay, if it's uncharted waters, then and everybody's in the same boat with it, then what do we need to do? Now, the one thing you want to really embed, in your mindset is that we have to starve the distractions and feed the focus. So we have to. So the media, and let me just beat up on the media for it. They have. It's a huge distraction. Are we coming out of lockdown? I even said it to you before, Jackie. Oh, what's the traffic light system at the moment? So we get stuck into this we get distracted by all the noise around us. And what we really need to do is to starve the distractions, but feed our focus. And that requires a goal. You have to pick what the goal is for 2022 for you. And I could talk all day on goal setting because that's the main topic I talk about. But you know what most people do? Most people feed the distractions. Oh, what's Facebook saying? What's on the news? Or what's in the paper? Or and so we feed the distractions, and which hence we starve our focus.
You can see the cogs turning and even some hearts fluttering. As you know, in these conversations, those that have been here before, we value silence. So it's okay if no one talks for a while. So just bear that in mind. We don't have to speak. Often we once waited 11 minutes. I don't recommend that we do that today.
That's a long pause.
But silence is okay, folks, is what I'm saying.
Through COVID, I clarified my passion, and so it's changing. But I really hadn't got a business started per se before then. I just about to start it, and COVID came along, and where I live in Victoria, basically, we've been in and out of lockdown for almost 2 years. So that was a long time. And I made my mind up at the beginning. What I was planning to do before that was to run some workshops, you know, fairly locally. And as soon as COVID came along, I saw that I could present to people internationally or globally.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how at that time. So knowing very little about social media, etc., I spent most of the 2 years attending virtual programs on how to work, what social media was and how it works, etc.
Yeah.
And then when I came out the other end, I call that my COVID bubble. So this bubble had been going around somewhere, but it certainly wasn't anywhere in particular. When it stopped, I had a different passion than I had when I went in. And it was very specific, and yet it made the most sense because it focuses as well in the book that I had published. And it's about, it's really focused on choosing your career. And I believe that going ahead in 2022, everybody will have a different career focus once they figure out that that's not the same anymore than it was previously, because I think that the whole of the energy and universal energy has changed.
Yeah, 100%. I'll back that up. Kath, one of the things that people have, I think there's been an awakening with a number of people that they've gone, well, why do I need to go into the office? You know, I think of one of my clients globally has been Toyota, and over the last, you know, let's say 3 years before COVID hit, so probably, 2017, 2018, probably, Toyota made a decision to consolidate offices around the world. So in the States, they've got they had a big sales and marketing office in Torrance, in California, and they had a big manufacturing and head office in Dallas, Texas. And so they decided, same in Australia, they've got a Port Melbourne in Melbourne, and they had Caringbah in New South Wales. And Toyota said to a number of their staff, now understand this, is that less than 1% of people ever leave the Shire, ever leave Cronulla, and they expected probably about 70% of their people to pack up their bongos and move to Melbourne. And no disrespect to Melbourne or anything like that, it was about 10% of people agreed, and they threw some more money at it and all that sort of stuff. And because their thing was, well, that's where the head office is, that's where you need to be. Now, fast forward down to 2020 and 2022, there have probably been some people within Toyota who have not been into an office for 2 years, and their business has run as effective, as efficient as before. And I think that's exactly the same with a number of organisations, anywhere in the world. I'll give you an example. One of my clients in the US, they're consolidating offices at the moment because, they find at least 60% of their people will not go back into the office. They don't have to. They don't need to. They don't. And even if they're out on the road, what do they need to go back into an office? So they're consolidating their offices. In actual fact, in 2020, they saved $16 million in travel to conferences and events and training. 16 million. And so people are looking at how they do their business differently. And also, coming back, Kath, to what you were saying, people are also saying, well, a little bit like me, I've enjoyed not commuting to speak at a conference. People have enjoyed not, I've got clients in London that were 2.25 hours on the train to commute to their office in London at Tower Bridge, one way. So, there's 4.5 hours that they've just gotten back. And so people are now pursuing their passions, whether it's cycling or playing golf or whatever it might be. They're pursuing their passions, and some of them are starting up side hustles because that's easy to do these days. And also there's a big there's a big vacuum at the moment where a lot of people have pulled the pin. You know, it hasn't reflected in unemployment numbers, but a lot of people have sort of gone, well, I actually don't want to, you know, be in the large corporate anymore. And there is a skill shortage, you know, across our country, across the US, and across the UK as well as New Zealand at the moment. So because people just have got choices.
Can I come in from another perspective?
Sure.
So I remember, it was a long time ago for me, but in my early 20s, when I started working in the industry and I used to travel to the city, it was the best time in my life. Got to meet people, things like that. My partner's son, he's 21, 22, got a great job at Deloitte's. He got it just as COVID started.
Yeah.
So he's missed out on that incredible part of his life. So there's aspects of it where we need to rethink how we can do that collaboration and meeting people and at all different ages.
I read in the Australian today that they did a silent survey of all the top CEOs in the country and said, what are your concerns about in 2022? And of course, this is something I've said to most of my clients. The two biggest challenges we're going to face as people, come back into offices, and remember, a lot of the businesses, by the way, still got office space rented and leased and furnished and all that sort of stuff. The biggest conversation, and you hit the nail on the head, Denise, is collaboration and culture. As good as virtual is, it's very difficult to collaborate on it, and it's very difficult to create culture or to continue to embed the right culture in people, because people have to have this connection. And I see that what will happen in the future is that even if companies are saying you don't ever have to come back into the office again, but every month or every quarter we'll run a town hall where we bring people into a hotel or into some sort of a venue to just make sure they, A, we get them back on their true north, and B, we get them realigned with the company. And you're right, a lot of people who have picked up a job and still don't, they know all of their team members virtually, but they don't know them personally. So they don't know about them. They haven't had the I don't know, the beer with them. They haven't had the cup of tea or coffee with them and said, so what do you do and where'd you come from and what sport did you play as a kid, and et cetera, et cetera.
I think one of the things that's in line with this, Denise and Keith and others, is I wrote an article recently it was called Local is Our Future. It's based on the book of that name, because the local movement, it's been a movement worldwide for over 40 years. And what's happened then, with thanks to Simone, who introduced me to two of her former colleagues at the City of Greater Geelong, the research shows that during COVID, online sales went up dramatically in the first few months. But there's now been a decline of that, and people are spending money locally, and that the whole CBD experience is actually shifting.
Yeah.
I listened to the Mayor of Melbourne, Sally Capp, recently. She's onto this, because here's what happens for most of us. We can get whatever we want in our lives just around the corner. I don't need to go any more than 2 Ks to get everything that Carol and I need in our lives. I go into Geelong, which is 25 minutes away, for some of the things that I can't get locally, like when I need to see my doctor, I've got to go to Geelong, or when I need to fix my glasses, I've got to go to Geelong. I would never go to Melbourne ever again, except for what's special about Melbourne. And that is that when I go to Melbourne, I can have an experience that I can't get in too many cities in the world. Because there's an arts district, there's a theatre district, there are restaurants, there are all kinds of things. And so a lot of CBDs are reinventing themselves as that place that you go to for a special experience. And any corporates who are wise are doing the same thing, because so they're getting their people still to come into the city, but for different reasons. And for the reasons that Keith's talking about, culture, collaboration. I mean, Jackie and I and the team that wrote the Enough book, we proved you never need to be in the same room again. We wrote a whole book all online, working together. But there is something, and I think this is I'll put it to the group. We all crave human connection. And there's something magical about doing that in the same room. And so I don't think anyone's suggesting that we shouldn't be meeting in person. I think what the trend is, and this is where it's uncharted, is that that experience will be different. And so that's I think the way that it can be. When I take my morning walk, Karen and I, and we look across the bay and we see the Melbourne skyline, it's crystal clear today because there's no pollution. So I don't think we want to go back to that polluted world where we could look across the bay and not see a bloody thing. I don't want to go back to that world. I don't want to go back to being in a car for 3 hours on the highway going to Melbourne. But what I want to do is go to the great city that Melbourne is and have an experience that I can't get anywhere else.
Good
and
point.
I think that's what wise employers are going to do with CBDs in the future. Plus, they'll become places to live, which is already happening in Melbourne.
Yeah,
Thank you, Lon, for
point.
that. And welcome, Jamie. Glad that you could finally get there, and hope that that personal challenge was sorted. It'd be interesting for someone, we'll put someone on the spot here, a volunteer perhaps, to capture what we've covered in this first half hour, 40 minutes, what we've covered and what have been the highlights for you. As you know, in this case, I'll pick a volunteer, but I'll give you a moment to do that yourself before I pick on you. Who'd like to summarise for Jamie the highlights of our first 40 minutes? We're about halfway through, so who'd like to summarise?
Do you want a real quick one?
Go for it, Simon. Thank you for volunteering.
We should be trying to grow through COVID, not go through COVID.
Yeah.
Authenticity as humans is the new currency, and a great currency. And Keith mentioned a few unwords, but Ian chipped in with Unchartered when referring to 2022. And just from that latter part of the conversation, I do apologise. I'm at work and unfortunately, people have access to me. But you've just made me remember of something I told myself a while ago. People remember people.
Yeah.
And my little example is my wife and I were buying a car in the early 2000s, and I work in retail. We're not talking the best BMW or Porsche. One of those everyday cars, starting with H. I tell you what, this was early 2000s. I could not tell you if I paid $19,000, $20,000, $21,000 or $25,000 for that car. And $1,000 meant a lot to me back then. But I tell you what, I remember that salesperson because they used some very manipulative closing techniques on my wife, who the car was ultimately for her to drive. Yeah. So that's just sparked something in my memory.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Simon. Both good and bad. I always just think that you just got to stay connected with people, and often people get the whole connection and communication. People, we just need to communicate our message. We just need to, our people, we just don't have good communication in our business, or we haven't communicated that effectively to our customers, or whatever it might be. And a long time ago, about, I don't know, probably I've been on this bandwagon now for about 8 years. I just stopped using the word communication and started using the word connection, because my belief around this is that if I don't have a connection with you, I can send you 100 emails and you'll answer none of them. But if I have a connection with you, I can send you 100 emails and you'll answer all of them. And I've just always banked, and I'm pretty sure Ian's done the same thing, and I bet you most people on this session today has done the same thing, is you get that, you know, people do business with people they know, trust and like. And the only way you're going to do that is build a connection with people. And so what does that look? My thing, a couple of things. My thing around this is add unprecedented value to them. Play the long game. So if I don't make $1, it's okay. I'm playing the long game because I know what goes around comes around. And the other piece of the puzzle is stay in touch with people when they're not doing business with you. You know, how many businesses, and I think, Simon, you mentioned one there, being a car dealership, and I do a lot of work in that industry, is the thing I beat down on them a fair bit is most of them operate on the 3F principle: find them, flog them, forget them. There is a 4th F, I'm not going into that today, but that's what tends to happen. And so this is why when we talk about authenticity is the new currency of credibility, then what I really think that we need to be doing in a world where people feel a little isolated, a little divided, is that we have to build greater connections with people, and have, as Ian said, these meaningful conversations. Because I still think that regardless of what happens, people are still searching for that, whether it be virtually or in person. They're still searching for that.
Something wonderful, of course, we all know this, but I think having the focus on human connection reminds us of this, and that is that we're all one of a kind human beings. You know, there's no duplicates.
Yeah.
And so what I'm looking at here, it might be a screen, but as I look at you folk, what I think of when I look into your eyes, and that's one of the things I do like about small groups on Zoom. I can see the whites of your eyes. I can see whether they're shining or not, as Benjamin Zander would say. But what I see is a one of a kind. And I think it's an honour to be in the presence of human beings, none of whom have existed before. And everyone we meet is a one-off.
Yeah, good point.
How can we not be true to that one of a kind that we are? Because at the end of the day, that's authenticity. It's rumoured that Oscar Wilde once said, you know, you've got to be yourself because everyone else is taken. And I think that, and what we want is we want people to see us. We want people to acknowledge us. We want people to appreciate us. We want people to be kind to us.
Yeah.
And that at the end of the day, that really hasn't changed just because of COVID. Kindness is still better than not. Appreciating people is still better than not appreciating people. Being compassionate is still better than not being compassionate. And these, of course, are all keys to human connection. You know, we want compassion, we want kindness, we want appreciation. And, you know, as Keith, I think one of your sayings is that, you know, the cream always rises to the top. That might be one of yours.
Yeah.
The folk that are thriving in the world today, from what I can see, are those that are being truly human. They're being compassionate, they're being kind, they're being appreciative. They're doing the things that show that you care, like staying in touch for no particular reason.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100% agree with that, Ian. I think that that whole piece around connection, there's no secret to why did I, you know, like lose 70 jobs, you know, 3 months later, had them all back plus more. You know, it's because I made those 200 phone calls. You start 200 conversations with people and it's going to lead to something, you know. And I had one of my clients, Audi, I hadn't done any work for Audi at that point of time, and I reached out to the CEO who I'd met and who had been referred to me and just said, look, and they said, we really, really appreciate your offer. And we'd love to take you up on that offer of doing something for free for our people. But he said, we're not going to take you up. We'll pay you. And it wasn't a ploy from my part. It was just how best can I add value. And they've been a great client. And it was just would I have had that client if it wasn't for that circumstance? It's just one of those things. I didn't do it to get work. I did it because I wanted to learn this, and thought the best way I can add value is telling their people that it's going to be okay, that everything's going to be okay.
And it's often such, I mean, that sounds simple, doesn't it? But you think about it, the value of it is in the profoundness of it. So it's simple yet profound.
Yeah. You know, I reckon one of the best things that anybody can do right now is reach out to your clients. Maybe it's a text message. I try and avoid email from a connection point of view. From a logistics point of view and from a confirmation point of view, obviously I use email, but a phone call or a text message to someone to you know, that almost, who's the guy that's, you know, the nine word email, you know, just reach out and say, you know, just thinking of you. I trust you're travelling well. Anything I can do for you, let me know. Love to see you and love to chat with you in 2022. Or all the best for the festive season. You know, just, you know, I've been a firm believer, and Ian knows this, and I've belted on to my colleagues, is I am not famous. I've never climbed Mount Everest. I'm not the Olympian. I'm pretty much average, and I've built a really great speaking business with a decent profile. But you know, I've built it by contacting 7 people every day. You know, if you contact 7 people every day, 35 people a week, somebody's going to say yes. Somebody's going to refer you. Somebody's going to give you an opportunity. You know, like, regardless of how big your business is or how small your business is, you know, if you just contacted, and you pick the number, but if you want to grow quickly, you know, for the next 90 days, you know, for the next night, just reach out to 7 people a day to say how's things going, and do it as a text message, and just see what pops out in 90 days. Let me tell you, your calendar gets full, your pipeline gets full, your opportunities, you know, the seeds you plant over there, you reap a reward for totally opposite that you don't know how it came about, but it happens there. And without getting too woo-woo with you, I reckon that's just how the universe works.
What goes around comes around. You mentioned earlier. Jackie will know, and Bernadette Jiwa, who's the founder of the Right Company and a best-selling author like you, Keith, and soon you and I, Jackie, with this enough book, but it's going to make the numbers, I reckon. But Bernadette, she has been involved in marketing for a lot of her life, and one of her mentors, of course, is Seth Godin.
Wow.
And one of the things she spoke to us about in the Right Company a while ago, which I really picked up on, and she says marketing is having helpful conversations. Yeah,
it's nice, isn't it?
It was a real game changer for me personally. I'm not 7 today. I'm just 1, because I only have a small collection of clients. But one helpful conversation every weekday. That's for me. We would call it a process or a practice, Keith, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
A discipline.
It's a ritual.
A ritual.
It's one of my non-negotiable rituals. Yep. Yeah. And you just, you know, and people say, oh, you know, so you do that when you're in the office. No, it wouldn't matter if I was in, you know, presenting all day and then on a plane and then, you know, getting home late or going on to the next city. I'd find time to send, you know, to make 7 calls or send, you know, 7 text messages, or write some notes or whatever it might be. You know, I found, you know, and so my contact was either a text message, a phone call, a handwritten note, or an unconditional gift in the mail. And so I'd find time to do that. And when you do it consistently over a period of time, you know, what's that lovely quote? You know, people create rituals and rituals form futures.
Wonderful. And I know I've had conversations, Keith, as I'm sure you have, with some people who've found that working from home has been very difficult. For some, yes, it's actually been unproductive. I've got a family member who, when she's been working at home, but she has to be on camera all the time, and she has to get permission to leave her computer. I'm encouraging her to leave her employer, but that's another story. But one of the reasons why people are unproductive is they don't have rituals. They don't have these routines. And I know myself, I'm fortunate I made a decision over a decade ago to work mainly online because most of you know it was a way of dealing with some health challenges. So I started on Skype, Keith, a hell of a long time ago. But what I've found is it's the discipline.
Yeah.
It's the routines, the rituals. I'm 37 steps from the front of my house. But every day I get up and I get dressed to go to work.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes I admit I'm in my pajamas. And if I was to stand up now, you would see that the bottom half doesn't match the top. But essentially, there is a routine. When I get up to go to work, I go to work. I don't come here to goof off.
Yeah.
I come here to go to work.
So just recently I reviewed all my standards and rituals and routines and everything like that. I listened to a great podcast by a guy called Jocko Willink, who he was a commanding officer, SEAL Team 3, head trainer for that particular SEAL team as well, or all the SEALs on the west coast of the US. So been in combat, all that sort of stuff. But he wrote a book called Discipline Equals Freedom. And it's a great book. It's a thick book, but it's not a big book to read. It's a really easy book to read. It's quite.
Say that again, Keith.
Jocko Willink, Willink. And the book he wrote was, and you can only get it as a hard copy book, not an audio book. It's called Discipline Equals Freedom. And I just think that for all of us on this call, and perhaps this is a wonderful question for everybody, Ian, is tell me what are the rituals or the routines that you have on a daily basis, apart from eating, sleeping, drinking, that type of thing, getting dressed, having a shower. What are the type of rituals that that when you do them consistently, you turn up as your best possible self? For me, I know I go for a walk about 8 Ks in the morning, and I know that when I do that, I turn up pretty well. It's either that or the gym, so I turn up pretty well. I know that if I'm in bed by 9 and I'm asleep by 9:30, I get up pretty early, which means I get a fair bit done. I know that's a good routine. I know that I like to read before I go to bed, and my version of reading is a couple of pages to half an hour. And so I give myself, some latitude there. I know for me that, the 7 contacts when I'm growing the business, and if I'm not growing the business, it's 7 a week. I also know that I need to start my day with at least 3 priorities. I also know, so what brings out the best version of you? Is that a good question, Ian? Can I turn the tables on everybody here today?
Wonderful question. What brings out the best version of you in terms of your rituals, your routines, your daily practices?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
It could be, Keith, I need to just be still in the morning or at some stage during the course of the day. So who'd like to kick us off? Please, thank you.
And it's not something that I'd really thought about until just then, because I'd probably say I don't have any, to be honest, Keith, and I probably should create. Like Ian, if I work from home, which is rare, I fully dress. Time I get up, nothing changes, So whether I'm sitting in the lounge room working or not, but I think when I'm out in the office, as I am today, I always like to be out here between 7 and 7:30. Most people don't start rolling until 8:15. And a ritual and routine for me is to fill the kettle up with water, make sure the tea bags and the coffee's all full, the lights are on, the air conditioner's on in the hot days, the heater's on, so that when others get here, they feel fantastic, and that makes me feel great.
Yeah, nice.
And I get a bit angry with myself if I'm running 10 or 15 minutes late, particularly in a Ballarat winter, and I haven't got the heater on and warmed the place up enough for everybody. And I wasn't thinking about it till you just said then, and it's probably, technically it's probably the only working ritual I do have from a morning perspective.
Nice
Here
one.
this morning, it was a hot day in Ballarat. The air conditioners was on. Everyone was wrapped. I literally had everyone's cups lined up for their coffees and teas when they got in, and they felt good, so I feel good. So
yeah, I love that, Jamie. Because that's just the real. Firstly, when I talk about rituals, we've all got different rituals. Some support us, some diminish us. But what we do need to have is we just need to be deliberate about it. And obviously you have that very deliberate ritual because it demonstrates that you care about the people around you.
and I must admit, I've just thought of another one, if I can steal a bit more time.
Another one,
please.
yeah.
So we've had, in my organisation, we've just had 4 months in a row, we've broken sales records month after month. So, and just as I'm sitting here talking to you, the CEO's just sent an email out now at 4:29. I've just read the heading. It's about so at 7:30 this morning. I sent out individuals, team, followed up by phone calls. But whether we make sales targets or not, each month I email the people in our finance department, our marketing department, the people that make our paint, the people that pick, wrap and pack it and send it out on trucks, and just thank them for their efforts. So irrelevant of whether we've made a target or missed a target, it doesn't happen just because I run the sales force. It's not just my 20 blokes out there that make this company work. It's the 360 people that work behind me that take the money, pay the bills, make the paint, So,
absolutely.
I sort of don't think of it as a ritual. I just think of it as just acknowledging other human beings. But again, that makes me feel good. Sometimes I get 1 reply, sometimes I get 40. Sometimes I get none, but that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, Jane. But once again, a really lovely just attention to detail and attention to being grateful and appreciative. And nothing but good can come from that. And whether people respond or don't respond, in your heart of hearts that what you're doing it makes a difference to people.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Always think of that lovely quote. What gets rewarded gets repeated. So if I want people to do something, I want to reward and recognise them as part of it. In my corporate life, before I started presenting and everything like that, I looked after an organisation called Radio Rental. So I was 27 years of age. That was my the job before I had in Suncorp. Excuse me for a moment. So I had 65 staff, about 15,000 customers, about 25,000 customers, about a $15 million business. And the manager before me would go around to these 9 retail stores that we had, and he'd go and find people doing the wrong thing. And I just, as I shadowed him for a week before I took over his role and he left the organisation, I just thought, it's a bit, and I read that, and I was just reading that book, In Search of Excellence, which is 1,000 years old, from Peters and Waterman, Tom Peters, and I don't know what Waterman's first name was, and was it Robert Waterman?
Robert Waterman, yeah.
Yep. One of the quotes that was in there is find people doing the right thing. And I went around and I just found people doing the right thing, and a little bit like you, Jamie, I wrote people handwritten notes, people I saw do great window displays, they went to the extra mile, I sent them a couple of movie tickets and stuff like that. And I've got to tell you, turn that business around. That business was going backwards when I took it over, and I just went and found people doing the right thing, and man, that made such a difference to people. Just that, kind word and appreciation and gratitude goes a long way. Anybody else, rituals, thoughts?
It reminded me, Keith, because thank you, of course, is a part of a trilogy of rituals. There's still 3 of the greatest things we can do. So the first one is to thank you and be authentic when we thank people.
Yes.
But the other 2 are just as powerful. The first one is to say please.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds simple, but a lot of people still they put out a request and there's no please attached.
Yeah, that's really a good point.
And then, of course, the biggest one and perhaps the most powerful one is to tell the people in our lives that we love them. So please, thank you, and I love you are still 3 of the great rituals.
Yeah, nice, eh? Like
I
that.
think another one to add there, Ian, too, is, and you know, when you get an email from somebody and it just says Jamie, or it doesn't say anything, it just says you know, sales reports aren't in on time or something, like just the acknowledgement of human beings, so, "Oh, Jamie," or "Good morning, Jamie," or whatever it happens to be. I'm big on ensuring that there is an acknowledgement or an entry to whatever the conversation I need to have in emails.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else?
Keith, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
You just mentioned something I've heard in the past a fair bit was what gets rewarded gets repeated. And I'd only ever heard it in conjunction with the first two, first two parts of it we were always told was what gets measured gets done.
Yes.
Do you have an update or a better angle on that?
There is a trilogy with that, Simon. So what gets rewarded gets repeated. What gets measured gets what's the one? What gets measured gets
done, and what gets done should get rewarded.
Yeah, there is a trilogy. I just can't remember off the top of my head, but I just know that the whole reward and recognition is really powerful, especially when you've gotten, especially when people are working virtually as well, because it's important just to you don't. I love a handwritten note. I love a handwritten note from a point of view is that very few people do it. It's easy to send an email blast out to everyone. We want to recognise Joanne in accounts because she has just been able to save X amount of dollars by introducing this new process, and we're truly grateful for Joanne. I had one of my clients send to all of their people's partners a care pack during COVID. So not to the person, to actually their partners. And the note was written by the CEO, and the CEO said, we know that we've asked you to do a lot in your home because of the pandemic. And we just wanted to say thank you to you and your family for being an unpaid team member of our organisation. And they sent like a Friday night, popcorn, something for the kid, half a bottle of wine. It was just a nice little, we are grateful, we are appreciative. I had another one of my clients who engaged a childcare worker, engaged a number of childcare workers in different age groups to run Zoom education sessions for their kids so their parents could have a bit of time, to just be with themselves. So it doesn't take much to make a difference. And as Ian said before, just that word of thank you, I'm grateful, I'm appreciative, I love the work that you're doing, goes a long, long way.
Love that. I just made me think again, last month we got a $100 Uber Eats voucher sent to. So it was emailed to us at about 4 o'clock on a Friday, every employee, and basically said have tonight or tomorrow
dinner's
night
on us.
Yeah,
nice, isn't it? It doesn't take much, means everything. So yeah, lovely. Anybody else's rituals? Did I say we're going to hear from everybody?
I'll go.
Jackie.
Thanks, Jackie.
I'm really ritualistic. I think I've always have been.
Good.
I get up at 5 o'clock every morning.
Nice.
I journal for half an hour and unpack the day before. I have a sort of a quiet time where I try and reflect on things, and I often get some really great insights for the day ahead. I'm a Christian, so then I pray for half an hour, and then
Nice.
I do some exercise for half an hour, and then because we're working from home at the moment, get on and work. And then at 10 o'clock, I try and stop for half an hour and do some yoga.
Nice.
Which I've discovered online, and in the afternoons when I finish work, I make myself go for a half an hour walk. So I've been finding that particularly the exercise part of it, it's really easy to go, I'm too busy to stop. I haven't got time to have a break, but when I allow myself to have those breaks, I feel so much more clearer in my work and can progress without feeling all fuzzy. And often I get a bit grumpy if I haven't exercised as well.
Yeah, and great rituals. But see, what that does is that brings the best version of you to the table or to the virtual call or to the family or whatever it might be, the next client you talk to. It brings the best version of you to. And I think one of the things that we need to learn as adult human beings is, what do I need to do every day that just brings the best version of me to the people who mean the world to me? So whether that's family, whether that's colleagues, whether that's community, whether that's colleagues, whether that's clients, it's about how do I bring the best version of me. And most people never work this out. Most people never ever, as you've done, Jackie, go, well, if I do that yoga at that stretching and just that stillness, for 30 minutes, it just sets me up. It re-energizes me. It just helps me to think or concentrate or whatever it might be. And often people will go, I'll just work through that because I've got a lot on my plate. But I also believe that sometimes we have to take a step back to be able to run forward. And most people aren't prepared to take the step back because they think they're going to be too far behind the 8 ball.
In our Wise Leaders groups, we focus on two facets. First of all, we say, who do we need to be? And then the second bit is, what do we need to do?
Yeah.
Because, I think we've found that it's who we are first. We say who before do.
Yeah.
It's who do we need to be? And then what do we need to do? Yeah. And the rituals and routines are good for both aspects. And you're touching on, of course, both of those, Jackie, because there's some being bits as well as some, doing bits. I know my routine over time, I don't work for any more than 90 minutes at any given time. I work for 90 minutes and then I go out in the garden, I go for a walk, I read a book, I have morning tea with my wife. I do something completely different before I come back to work. And that's became a shift in routine that's, I think, kept me, ahead of the game, because I haven't got my head in the work all the time. I'm focused on who I need to be, and I'm allowing myself to become that person and then take that into my actions. Who's next? We're coming in for a landing shortly, so we've still got Donovan, Kathy. Kathy, away you go.
Kathy's got a hand up.
Yeah, away you go.
Well, every evening before I go to sleep, I go to bed fairly early, 9 o'clock each. And I'm always very grateful for everything that I have. And it takes a while sometimes to get through that list. And then if I'm not going to sleep at that stage, I do a meditation, silent meditation.
Yeah, good.
And then when I wake up in the morning fairly early, similar to Jackie, I have a ritual to do journaling, maybe read a little bit. And I have a machine that I work out on before breakfast. If I miss that, the day doesn't turn out so well. And straight after breakfast, I'll spend a short while doing some dishes. And that's part of my meditation too, because it's quiet and everything's in order. And and plan ahead for the day. And I only try to do maybe one major thing during the day or the week. I have other things to do, and I would start them if I'd finished the first one, but I focus on the first one first, because otherwise my mind tends to wander to other things.
Yeah, nice. Great rituals. But just that being silent in the morning, one of the things that I do is I take 3 really deep breaths into the bottom of my heart, which just tends to ground and centre me a little bit, and also just have a little mantra around the number one goal I'm focused on. And so the funny thing about it is I take those breaths in my heart. Often I find an answer will come, somebody's name will pop in my head or something like that, and inevitably, if I contact them, there's often an opportunity, which is really, I know it sounds a bit woo-woo and weird, but that's what tends to happen for me. So it's just about getting very focused. So I like yours, Kathy. That's nice. Jody, what about you? I see you've unmuted, mate, whether that's on purpose or not, but you're up.
No, it's on purpose. Need to contribute. I think it. For me, it's about making sure that I am focused, and I really did like your comment about feed the focus, and probably more recently, probably since COVID, just trying to get rid of all the stuff that's just unnecessary. I don't think I've done that just yet, but and I'm a list writer, so the lists are usually fairly long. Yes. And I've really tried to halve them and really just focus on those elements that I can control or will deliver value to our clients, to our team, to myself as well, to family. So, for me, so the ritual for me is really getting that list right at the end of the day. Revising what we've done for the day before, and working out for me what needs to happen, what are the priorities for the next day, and I tend to then have some focus. I can relax, therefore knowing that the day is planned for try to be organised.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Jody, the guy I mentioned before, Jocko Willing, wrote another book called Extreme Ownership, and they talk about the 8 guiding principles of the SEAL teams, and one of the principles is prioritise and execute. And really hard to prioritise and execute if you don't have a list. And so I love that you got a list. Do you use a platform for your list, Jody? Do you just... I
use a Google Keep. It's a little app within Google. Yeah, Google Keep. Okay. So part of the Google or Gmail platform, which is accessible online. Gives me some tick boxes to feel good about. Finishing something, easy to manipulate, and I think in line with that, in the morning, we do a reasonable amount of business in the US, so there's a fair amount of communication that comes in overnight, and I'd like to kind of take care of that, review that, respond to people as quickly as I can, getting up as early as I can to make sure that we're responding and we're communicative, we're connecting, not just leaving it till the end of their day. Yeah, and that tends to help me focus too on the list, because it doesn't usually include that work. So I'd like to get that all done before I even come into work. So then I can focus on the list.
I hadn't heard of that Google Keep. I use a thing called To-Do List. TODOIST, and that works a treat as well. I've used a couple of different versions, but that's the one I like at the moment. So cool.
Yeah, Mac has got a reminders app as well. That tends to be a little flaky. So I just found this is really good. I think the other thing that kind of flowing on from Jamie's conversation was about a team ritual that we've had, probably started by one staff member that's unfortunately no longer with us, but we'd like to keep up that his idea, and that was to just a simple thing, making coffee for somebody in the morning, clearing the dishes from their desks, cleaning up the wine glasses from Friday night drinks that are still there, that sort of thing, and kind of just showing you care for the team. I must admit, I probably make less coffees than I get made for myself, but I am appreciative.
Yeah, good, nice.
Just a quick one, Jody. I'm not sure if it would help. During our sort of 160 months in our peer groups, we've been talking about decluttering. So that be decluttering parts of your life, decluttering you around your desk, decluttering at home, cleaning out the cupboards, cleaning out the shed, and we talked a lot about using that time through that lockdown of COVID to get those things done that are in your way, or you look every morning and you go, God, there's that jar of water half full. I've got to get rid of it, but I don't do it. So, if it helps, really focus on decluttering. But
Yeah.
what we talk a lot about is not just sort of decluttering your work life and situations and stuff, but you sort of make it evolve around at home as well. And
that's good. Thank you.
Got a lot out of that. Yeah.
Also, we've talked about
Well,
decluttering the mind as well, because interesting how Keith's heart breaths. We know, of course, those of us that have worked in the groups on heart leadership, that the heart knows. And the trick to life is not to doubt your heart, because it knows. It's only the mind that plays tricks, because the mind, of course, is replaying the stories that we taught it. And so if you hear your heart knows. Don't get used to not second guessing it, but then declutter this mind. It is a marvelous machine, and I'm with Keith. We've got to think about things mentally before we approach them physically. But the mind's full of a lot of noise that we put there.
Yeah.
And so decluttering it is a great process. One of my rituals is that I too have a heart meditation practice that I've been now on for a very long time. And one of my rituals is then to ignore what my mind says after that meditation. And in fact, I have a ritual that I actually tell my mind out loud to be quiet, that I do not want to hear from you in this moment.
Nice.
And what I find is that when I leave my thoughts be for a time, that when I actually come back and I say to my mind, all right, we can talk now, I've actually got greater clarity. And often, like you, Keith, that's when someone pops into my mind, and there's a flow from there. But it's the discipline of not paying attention to this noise inside our heads.
Yeah.
All right, we've got Denise, I think, and Donovan, and I think Simon to go, and then we'll have a little landing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please,
sorry.
Denise.
No,
you go.
So my routines, I suppose, is very similar to Keith. I exercise in the mornings, and the only thing that I do differently is I'm creative every day. So,
Nice.
and one of the good things with COVID is, or one of the advantages of COVID, I suppose, is 6 o'clock yesterday morning, I did an online life drawing class that was conducted in New York. So,
Cool.
So for me, being creative is what keeps me centered.
Wonderful.
Yeah, nice. I love that too, Denise. I think I live with a couple of creatives, being my wife and my 2 daughters, and they're they're creative. And I think if I learned anything from them as well, is that ability to have time and space around you gives you the opportunity to be creative. And though I don't draw or paint or anything like that, I do spend a bit of time when I am still to actually create content or models or methods, or just having that opportunity as well. So I love that. Yeah, good. Donovan, what about for you?
Okay, I think maybe 3 things that if I don't do them, I'll get upset. First is to go to the gym or do some kind of exercise every day.
Yeah, good.
I'm hoping to get to 100 years old, and hopefully the body can get there. So if I don't go to the gym or some sort of exercise, I'll get quite upset. The second one, my sister got me hooked onto skincare quite a long time ago. And if I don't take care of my face in the morning before I go to work and before I go to bed, I just don't feel so I guess it refreshes me in the morning, and it's just part of the wind down in the evening. So I've got to do that. When I'm actually in the office, I also like to have a coffee in the morning and in the afternoon pretty consistently. If I don't do that, that also kind of throws my groove out, I guess. Yeah, and it's got to be, and if it's with someone else, not for a conversation, to have a connection with someone else during those coffee breaks, that's I guess the icing on the cake is part of that routine. So nice. I guess that's 3 kind of big ones.
Yeah, I like your skincare routine. No wonder why you look so young and effervescent, mate. So yeah, good.
That's just a filter, yeah. But thanks, I appreciate it.
No, that's a great idea. I suppose just washing your face with soap, that doesn't count, eh?
One of the most interesting things I found during my health battles of recent times is my doctors talked to me a lot about hydration, and I already knew that, and so I've been a big water drinker for a long time. But one of the things they recommended was the use of moisturiser, Donovan. So I've become a a convert because I didn't really know the power of it. Because one of the side effects I've had to my treatment has been skin rashes. And I found that a routine of moisturising morning and night has been a game changer. Who would have thought from a bloke's perspective, ladies? You probably already
I'm doing it. I had some skincare to start off earlier this year, and I've got some dots and spots. And yes, I've been recommended to withdraw. So it's not a ritual. It's not 7 days a week, but I have been doing it.
Nice. Simon, what about for you? Lucky last.
Yeah, I've got to say, I was a very sort of strict and rigid person with rituals, but having recently a toddler come back into our house, you don't know who you might be sleeping with at what time, and you might want to get up at 6 o'clock, but it can become a bit of a battle. And
this is your nephew, Simon, if I recall.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So, but I think, common theme for the whole group, though. I think when I can, and I do push to do it at least a couple of working days a week, is if I can go for a decent run in the morning and then also ride my bike to work, that puts me in a pretty good place.
Yeah, good.
The run in the morning, like, I'm not great at it, but that just press Control Alt Delete on my brain, pretty much. Listen to some music from when I was much younger, makes me feel good, and just probably that little bit more intense exercise, just somehow puts your mindset somewhere else, and wipes the blackboard or the whiteboard down clear, and then I do all the normal things, get into work, and then my ideal would be, when I get into work, when everyone else starts, we do a little bit of a group check-in of a morning. But then if I can get around to the majority of people and have an individual check-in, at least once a week with them, at the start of the week, hopefully, how was your weekend, all that sort of stuff. I think that's a good foundation for me.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Like it.
Well, we're getting towards the top of our time, folk. I hope that you've found today extremely valuable. I have, as is a policy in these Sparker Nation conversations, I always give our guests the last word. So Keith will have the last word shortly. But before we give Keith that opportunity, I'll just give anyone else an opportunity to maybe comment. No compulsion, but just before we hand back to Keith, I'll do a little formal segue to that, Keith, and then when you're done, I'll press the record button. And folks, if you want to hang around for a minute or two, we're up for that too. But just before I go to Keith, is there anything else that is in the space for you at the moment that you'd like to?
Yeah, apologies I was late, but really keen to watch the recording to get the first 40 minutes, because I've been typing notes while you've been chatting, and I've got 17 notes out of the last 40 minutes. So 5 with asterisks, which is basically, for my mindset, is start doing that first thing tomorrow. Yeah. So yeah, I thank you, and you've reminded me to do something. Ian knows this. I've got 3 very close connections in my life. They also happen to be work colleagues. And about 8 weeks ago, I, rightly or wrongly, I just decided to stop checking in on them. So if you want to talk about a ritual, I would ring them 3 to 5 times a week. So basically every day, whether it be about work or home. There's a few personal battles with a couple of them at the moment. And I thought, I had a bit one morning, I thought, these bastards don't ring me. I'm the one that rings them all the time. I won't ring them for a week and just see what happens. And I'll sit here today saying 8 weeks later, one of those blokes hasn't rang me. Haven't had any conversations with him at all in 8 weeks. And I sort of thought, well, okay, how close is this friendship? Because is it me just driving it all the time? But what I've heard in the office in the last 5 or 6 days is every time he rings somebody, he goes, "Oh, is Willow in there?" He hasn't. Tell him to pick the phone up, you know. And in my mind, I've said, no, get stuffed. You pick the phone up. Don't tell them to tell me to pick the phone up. But tomorrow I'm going to pick the phone up. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Good.
Look,
Nice.
we always take away something, Jamie. I was recalling someone was having a chat about, there was a memory of a long past conference. I don't know whether you remember it, Keith, but I think it was the 2000 Professional Speakers Conference where we had Brian Tracy with us. And I must admit, I was a little preoccupied in the preamble to Brian speaking. I was looking forward to it. But then I heard Brian's words, and I was fortunate enough to have a private conversation with him afterwards. But he said, if it is to be, it's up to me. And that's kind of 20 years ago, but it was, and I said to him, that was one of the great reminders, because, you know, there's a lot of people waiting for other people. But at the end of the day, if it is to be, it's up to me. And that's probably a perfect little segue, Keith. And by the way, folks, Keith has a regular video. I recommend signing up to Keith's YouTube channel if you're not a subscriber already, because there's a pearler at least once a week comes out. I find it hard to go past starve the distractions and feed the focus.
Yeah.
But Keith,
if you just go,
Keith, it's been a great honour to have you in the room.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Thanks, everybody, for the opportunity. And as Ian said, if you go to keithabraham.com/subscribe, you get, I do a vlog, you know, in essence a blog, but it's a video. So if you love that. Look, thank you for the opportunity to hang out with you, have a conversation. I've really thoroughly enjoyed, and I've written down, you know, a bit like you, Jamie, I've written down 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 notes for me, just out of what everyone said today. So thank you for educating me and giving me some insights and some ideas. If I can finish on one quote, you know, there's that lovely quote that says, if you want to plant for days, plant flowers. If you want to plant for years, plant trees. But if you want to plant for eternity, then plant ideas. And I think that what Ian has created with you is the opportunity to plant those ideas and to flourish from those ideas. So thanks very much for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been another
Thanks, Keith.
Bugger Nation.
Hold it, Ian. Let's do this properly. Let's just let me do this properly for the group here. Hold on, tick. Let's do it this way. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Well done. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well done, everybody.
Yeah, very good.
There you go. It's been a wonderful conversation. I'm just going to stop the button now, but our special guest today has been the one and only Keith Abraham. We thank you again, Keith, for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thanks, Ian.